In this video I'm gonna explain exactly how to take photos like these ones. You can do it with any camera and it's actually pretty simple. My name is Micael Widell. I've been doing photography videos on YouTube for 7 years, both street photography and macro photography, so if you're interested in that, please consider subscribing. Back in 2012, before I was actually into photography, I did some experiments with long exposures, these photos, and I really liked them. And then later I found these photos by Frank Machalowski, a German photographer, and I really love the look when you turn these kinds of photos black and white. So today I wanted to try something similar, but handheld, with no support at all for my camera, just to see if it would be possible and what the results would be. So I went out with my Sony A9 Mark II and my Samyang 75mm lens in the rain in Stockholm, set my camera in shutter priority, and I had to use single shots because at slow shutter speeds that I'm gonna use in this video of 0.3 to 1 seconds, burst mode does not work, at least not on my camera, so I had to do single shots. And that's basically it. I set the ISO in auto ISO, and I let the aperture adjust itself. And then I tried different shutter speeds between 0.3 or so seconds and 1.0 seconds. And for many shots I tried to follow the subject, like here I tried to follow the person walking, so that you get this kind of very interesting surreal effect where the subject is almost sharp but the background is just completely blurred out, and it looks very interesting if you ask me. And as you can see, it is possible to achieve a quite interesting look just handheld. For these photos I actually had image stabilization in the camera enabled, steady shot as it's called on Sony cameras. I also tried some photos later in this video with steady shot disabled, and I can't really say that I noticed that big of a difference. I'm not sure how much of a difference it actually does on these shutter speeds, but I got the impression that at least for panning photos like these ones, it could be a good idea to have steady shot on to give the pan a little bit more of a smooth feel. I had set the ISO in auto mode, but the result is of course that it is pretty much always at ISO 100. Because when you have this long shutter speed and daylight, the camera will try to keep the ISO as low as possible, and it will never be any problems to keep it at 100. And actually the aperture, as you see here, will be anywhere between 11 and 22. And I didn't use an ND filter in this video. I just used my camera and lens and nothing else, because I wanted to show you that it is possible with any camera to do this kind of photography. But for next time I actually will use an ND filter. Maybe an ND8 that reduces the light coming into the camera with 3 stops. And the reason for that is that I noticed that whenever I tried to have the sky in the background, the exposure would be overexposed, because even at the smallest possible aperture of f22, even at the lowest ISO possible on my camera, ISO 100, and with the shutter speed that I had chosen, 0.5 or 1 seconds, then there would be too much light coming into the camera, and in that case you need an ND filter to make it work. So I actually had to throw away quite a lot of photos that I took from this photo walk just because I didn't have an ND filter. But in most cases it worked, thanks to the overcast weather, the rain. It wasn't too bright, so it worked pretty well. And this is actually a very fun and good and nice experiment to do on a rainy, boring, grey day, just for this reason. You get interesting photos even though the weather is not that interesting. I took a total of around 270 photos on this photo walk, and when I got home I looked at each photo both in black and white and in color just to see what would look best. And in my own personal taste I found that in 9 cases out of 10 black and white looked better. And then in some rare cases, as I'm showing in this video, I actually found the color version better. But overall I think it's great to default to black and white when doing this kind of photography. I can't really explain why, but it just looks better. It just looks more surreal, beautiful, and the motion blur gets softer in a good way. And when you use colors, they tend to not be that interesting, at least not when the weather is gray as it was today for me. And I think what makes these photos in many cases interesting and even beautiful is the motion blur. The motion blur simplifies the photo, makes a large part of it become negative space. The same way a fast lens might blur out the background. You get a simpler photo, and that in many cases helps you get a more beautiful photo. I want to give you a small piece of advice when it comes to editing these photos. When they are in black and white, they can often look very, very gray, as you can see here. And an easy way to make them more contrasty is the curve here. Just drag the left part and the right part, like I'm doing here, and immediately you increase the contrast in a good way to get the photo a lot punchier. To get the blacks to be darker and the whites to be brighter, and I did this for most of my photos. Overall, I was very happy with this photo walk. I was out for only like 1 hour, I think, and still I got so many photos that I was very happy with, a lot more than I normally get on 1 hour on a rainy day in Stockholm. This, I think, is actually my favorite photo from the whole walk. I don't know, it's just something with the vibe and the way we only see the legs moving and not much else. Really love that photo. Thank you so much for watching this video and see you soon again.